Council President Brian Riddle and Mayor Gloria Edling to request the passing of a resolution to create a LERTA district in the borough. And we spent a pretty good amount of time kind of explaining what the LERTA was, and you guys already had some familiarity with it. So I was hoping that, I'm not going to rehash all that. I was hoping I could provide some context for the commissioners as to how the idea of the LERTA came about and where it came from, and a few updates since that past, since that last meeting. The first page here, essentially we're here to request that you consider passing a resolution to create a LERTA district in the borough of Myerstown through the county. As you know, we passed an ordinance through the borough, and the Elko School District has passed a resolution, and so now we're coming in and asking the county. Everything kind of started in 2012 with the publishing of the mini comprehensive plan. It was actually a Lebanon County Commissioner funded program through the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Funding Program that funded that comprehensive plan update. And throughout that update, they set a large list of goals and objectives for the borough to work toward, to really just for the entire community. They set a vision and goals and objectives that they wanted to meet to realize that vision. And ever since then, kind of every decision and every project that has taken place in the borough has come back to the objectives set forth in that plan. After that plan, they went through the early intervention program, which is a program through the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development that assists communities that are in not doing well financially, but not necessarily in emergency mode to where they would need to go into Act 47. But the program essentially gives grant funding to hire a consultant to do a financial management plan. They look at your finances from the past, and they give you recommendations, usually a 5-year financial plan. It's something that a few municipalities around here have gone through. I know the city of Lebanon went through early intervention program, so the borough went through that as well shortly after as a recommendation from the comprehensive plan. Some of these I explained last time we were here. The plan, not only did they do a financial and management analysis, but they also did an economic development study. The findings were that the borough lacks a desired level of business presence. There are high rates of conversion of historically storefront properties into residential rental properties, especially in the downtown area. And although there is a large volume of traffic along 501 and 422, that resource is largely untapped, meaning there aren't many places where people are stopping to do any retail shopping or anything other than maybe going through a drive-through. And the borough has many parcels of land which are underutilized or underdeveloped. And our consultants explained to us that the main reason for that is the lack of incentive to develop. They said that there are financial hurdles for redeveloping that land, that when you do redevelop the land or develop the land, it results in a higher property value and therefore higher local property taxes. And they also mentioned that because approximately half the borough is designated as a low to moderate income census block, because of the lower income properties, there's usually not as much development or redevelopment in those areas. One of the recommendations from the EIP Phase 1 was to go through with an EIP Phase 2, and the way the state operates with the early intervention program is that you can continue to apply for grant funding for further projects as long as those projects relate to recommendations that were given in Phase 1. So in that Phase 1 report, we have approximately 95 recommendations that were given to us from all aspects, from management to, at the time we had a police department, recommendations about the police department, and then the last probably 16 or 17 recommendations were economic development recommendations. And one of them was to hire a consulting firm to come up with, to find opportunities for economic development in the borough. And so the purpose of in the report that they published, the purpose was to expedite economic development strategies in the borough and pursue a vigorous agenda for economic development in the borough. And since then, that's kind of been the mantra in terms of economic development. And in this, as a result of the EIP2 grant and working with the consultants at the time, the actions that were taken in Myerstown, they got a grant to assist in funding an economic development circuit rider program, which right now is a economic development position that serves both the city of Lebanon and the borough of Myerstown. A grant was awarded to assist in the funding and the purchase of the purchase and the renovation of Myerstown Elementary School, which the borough is almost complete with first phase renovations, and we've actually moved our offices into that building. A grant was acquired to assist in funding renovations to the community pool, which it's complete enough to where it's open to the public, but it should be closed out within the next couple months here. And a zoning ordinance analysis and recommendations were done to see how the regulations in Myerstown were, if they were compatible for business growth, what kind of things might be hindering our business growth that are in our zoning ordinance. And the final point of that was they created a plan for us to implement a LERTA program. They looked at the tax abatement programs in the area and some of the tax abatement programs that are currently implemented in neighboring counties, and said this would be a program, an incentive that could help Myerstown hopefully attract some development in the near future. We are currently in phase 3 of EIP3, meaning after we closed out the EIP2 project, the borough applied for funding for a phase 3, and the projects that are ongoing in this phase, the updating of the zoning ordinance and map, which has already been completed, that was put into effect in June of this year. That was about a year-long project. A branding and marketing campaign, which we are currently in the middle of with a branding and marketing consultant that's actually located in the borough. The creation of a small business resource center. In the building that we've acquired, one of the rooms we've reserved to be a small business resource center for young entrepreneurs who may, or any age, entrepreneurs who may want to learn how to start a business or learn how to apply for different funding for businesses, learn how to do really anything that relates to that. Obviously, I don't need to say too much about that, but whether it's taxes. And the vision for that is for it to be almost like a library resource. There will be a couple computers with access to software that helps create business plans. There will be, we're working with the Lebanon County Library System to purchase books to get in there and really it'll be a place where people from the public can come and just sit down and use it as a resource. Part of the project was to hire an architect to design renovations. That, because the renovations are almost complete, that's already been done. And then 2 kind of in-house items are developing a performance management system for our employees and developing a goals-based budget to make sure that the spending and the money that we're spending is in line with the vision that was created by the residents of the borough. And so that I hope provides a little bit of context for how the LERTA fits in with what the grand scheme has been for the borough. It all kind of came out of that 2012 mini comprehensive plan. Though that plan was made, it was a result of several public meetings with residents, business owners, asking their input as to which direction they'd like to see the borough go, and that's how that document was created.
Michael, I just ask a question. You mentioned how this would maybe position you better with competing with other counties that would have similar incentives. How about contiguous or even beyond other municipalities? And how do you see it rippling to them, or do you see them?
Within the county or still outside?
Within the county, I mean.
They're from, we did a little bit of homework, well, a lot of homework, but we visited a couple municipalities that currently have LERTA districts, and one of them was Lancaster, one of them was Phoenixville, but we probably garnered the most information from the city of Lancaster only because they've been doing tax abatement programs since the 80s, I believe. They started off with a small tax abatement program for businesses in a small part of their city, and if you look, about every 3 or 4 years they expanded it. They expanded it to be a larger portion of the city, a larger, adding in industrial properties, and right now pretty much the entire city of Lancaster has a tax abatement program for businesses and residential. So almost all properties fall under a LERTA tax exemption program.
Maybe I asked the question.
Sure.
Then how's this ripple to contiguous municipalities that would be right?
Okay, so you mean from a competitive standpoint?
Do you see them implementing similar to compete with you on an equal basis, or where do you see that going beyond your borough?
I don't think it'll have too much of an impact. I can't foresee any other municipalities requesting a LERTA. Maybe another borough, but there aren't too many financially distressed communities in the county the way Myerstown is. Myerstown, we're the only census block outside of the city of Lebanon that is low to moderate income, as defined by the U.S. Census.
And you're bordered on all sides by Jackson.
Correct. We're completely surrounded, and the primary purpose of any tax abatement program is to incentivize development where it may not have otherwise occurred without that program. And right now, for example, Jackson Township doesn't seem to be having a problem attracting development. Other municipalities in the borough, obviously each one is unique in its own way, but specifically because we are having trouble attracting development, and especially in our downtown, several of the old Main Street stores have been converted to rental properties, and we do have many opportunities for development and redevelopment. However, there's really no incentive that makes Myerstown stick out. It might be the same cost to develop in Myerstown as it is, a little further outside Lidditz. Obviously, it's getting more expensive there, but there's no extra incentive for them to come to Myerstown because there's not that extra incentive. Not as many people are looking, so we're trying to help create space.
I might just jump in on something. I think this isn't really legal, but the one thing that Michael and I talked about is that, so the LERTA, and I'm using the term LERTA a little bit loosely because the LERTA, strictly speaking, refers to commercial, industrial, and business properties. But there is a companion act that extends it to residential. And I said to Michael, well, how many undeveloped residential lots exist in Myerstown? And the answer is essentially none. I mean, there's really you're not gonna see like in Jackson Township or, for instance, in North Londonderry where I live, where, you get big developments, 200 lots of nice residential homes, and putting in those kinds of developments brings business. You put these homes in and you get people in sort of a nice middle to upper middle income area, and they bring in the demand for fitness centers and grocery stores and cell phone stores, on and on. But in Myerstown, you're not gonna have that kind of thing come in. There's just no room for it. There aren't vast residential tracts to be developed. And so when you're limited in expanding residential areas, I think you do have to look at what is undeveloped in this municipality and what's underused or really fits the definition of blight. And in Myerstown, those tend to be a lot of business, sort of industrial and commercial properties that are underutilized. And so, with the knowledge that you're not gonna necessarily have a huge increase in residential construction, I think a lot of this is related to how do you make Myerstown attractive to businesses that will then, just sort of generally improve those areas that are sort of underutilized or, sorry.
No, thank you very much.
Any questions or comments? Oh, John, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
My experience with the LERTAs is usually a developer comes in and there's a parcel of land that they want to develop. They get that, you inspect it because they've got something. Do you have specific parcels that you're looking for, or are you more general in terms of the borough?
Yeah, in the original plan for us to create the LERTA, there was actually a map that was developed. And the map, it showed the areas that would be benefited by a LERTA ordinance. And, it had all of Main Avenue and it had all of College. But it also had little pockets really throughout the borough. There's believe it or not, there's a lot of businesses that are in the borough. They're all very small businesses. You'll get a chiropractor here, a real estate agent here, but a lot of them are in converted homes, and they're kind of all around the borough. But the areas that need to be redeveloped are also all around the borough. And so when we went and met with a couple of the other municipalities and learned that they were using their entire municipality as a LERTA district, so that regardless of the area, there would be a tax abatement program. That's when we got the idea and said, hey, it's not just these areas. We're also having foreclosures kind of all over the borough. We're also having different areas of blight in all areas of the borough, and that's when we posited the idea to use the whole borough as a district. So that differs. That differs a lot from using a single property as a LERTA, mainly because the tax abatement for a single property is really for that company, whereas the LERTA program and the residential tax abatement is for the parcels. It's attached to the parcel. It's attached to the property. If John Doe decides to buy the old Odyssey Tops manufacturing building, which is sitting vacant right now across from the Myerstown Elementary, and he decides to put $500,000 into it, and then halfway through the abatement he decides to leave, someone else buys it, it stays with that property, and that property's been improved even though he's gone. So it comes from a bit of a different angle just because it is location specific as opposed to one business.
This is Liz.
I actually have a series of questions. First of all, you're able to proceed without the county's participation, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And number two, I'm not looking to expand the scope of what we do for LERTAs because I look at them as economic development in that they bring jobs. I'm not personally interested in including residences because I believe that if we abate in Myerstown, the tax reductions would get spread amongst taxpayers outside of your borough, and that's not fair to them. And also, if we are reducing it on residences in Myerstown, the city also came with a program that they wanted us to approve with tax abatements of sorts. It's a different program, but the bottom line is the same. They want a tax cut, and I was not in favor, again, for the similar reasons. And so I have some reservations with the proposal as submitted. And Palmyra also, I've heard talk from that they would be looking to follow suit. And any small community like Fredericksburg, whatever, I can imagine 1, 2, 3 domino effect, they'd all be in. And then it would be put all on the county taxpayer versus the boroughs and the city. And like I say, if you want to proceed on your own, I certainly commend you for trying that, but for the county, the way it's presented, cannot support it. And in addition, I've heard from some commercial property owners who said, we paid our own way to develop, why would we support paying for others because they get a tax break? So those are the kinds of comments I heard from actual business owners within Myerstown. Maybe you've heard some of the same, maybe you haven't.
No, I haven't. And actually, our council is pretty adamant about the program, and they haven't heard anything like that either. If anything, we've had a lot of businesses say, hey, we like this program because we want to develop and we want to take advantage of it. For example, there's a gentleman who's renovating the property on Railroad in Maine who wants to put a restaurant in. And he's still a little bit away from getting that done, but it's probably going to be about a 1 to 2 year process just because of the nature of the renovations and everything like that. And one of the reasons he chose Myerstown was because of the talk of the LERTA approximately a year ago. So he, it was when we had the previous borough manager, he came in and he sat down with him and he said, hey, the borough wants to be business friendly, and this is a program that we're pushing that we'd like to pass that you can take advantage of. And he specifically chose Myerstown because of that. And to address your other concerns, which I thank you for bringing them up. When we were looking at the abatement and the amount of taxes that would be abated, we looked at kind of the fact that there's no real cut involved with when the property taxes come out after the reassessment. The percentage is taken on the new dollars that are generated from that assessment. And so we looked at what would actually be lost, and obviously we knew what would be gained. Over the course of 7 years, we would get 100% of assessment on anything that's redeveloped. And we said, well, what's the loss in there? And the loss would be any extra services created by that development over the course of those 7 years. So if there was extra sewer, which is a utility what they would pay for, but police getting called or fire or EMS. And we looked at that and said, well, that's, the minimal cost incurred by that is certainly worth the development monies gained and the tax assessment that goes up, which brings more dollars in to the borough. So we didn't feel it would be any cost to any municipalities outside of the borough in those terms, in terms of us. Now, in terms of as the county, obviously you're speaking for the whole county, and and you have to do what you think is best for the county. But we did not want to go forward with this program without bringing it and asking, just because of the nature of the program, there's, it's municipal, it's school district, municipality, and county, and we kind of wanted to, give you the opportunity to partner with us in the program.
You get an A for persistence.
Sure.
And I thank you for your presentation. You did put some numbers in here,
Mhm.
which is very helpful. But I've explained my philosophy, and I can't speak for the rest, but at least you know where I'm coming from and why.
Sure, I appreciate you. And you did, I do thank you for sending the email. You sent an email with several detailed questions. And you, that we spent some time responding to, so I appreciate you taking the time to look into it.
So your logic is, and it's sound as far as I can see, but because it's not anything that is presently taxed, these are things, the projects and so on that are going to be done, so your thinking is that there is no loss of tax.
Right, and there would be no loss in revenue as
That you would recognize.
right.
Yeah.
And our hope would be that through enacting this program, we would attract more development, or not just necessarily attract, but incentivize current residents and businesses to develop, to get that increase in assessed value. And, you know, although they're abated in that increased value immediately 100%, over the course of 7 years, it becomes complete, and then you have a developed property on your tax rolls that's giving more taxes to, you know, the county, municipality, school district, and not just from a tax perspective, but from a development perspective. I mean, when there's development, there's energy generated around that attracts people. If people see that someone's building and redeveloping their home, well, maybe I should redevelop my home. Oh, there's this program, you know. So that's what we're hoping to spark.
I guess from sitting on this board and also serving as the assessment appeals board, I actually feel a sense of alarm of what I guess I could just say declining values in the county. I mean, we've been hit with many, and I see we have a full slate tomorrow afternoon, and properties that were assessed at, you know, $500,000-$600,000 were purchased for $145,000 as an example, or $200,000. And I guess over the long term, I'm wondering where we're heading as far as a tax base. And we do have, you know, significant new development that will probably replace some of that lost revenue. But you know, since the reassessment, you know, gratefully we have enough new development to replace that, but we've had to lower a lot of assessed values over these several years. It's very concerning to me. And I don't know if that's, I can't recall a lot of reassessments from Myerstown Borough. How is that?
A couple with baby.
Well, yeah. And the hardware store, which is now gone, unfortunately, I guess the business, but it is concerning, and I find myself kind of in a quandary on this one. I want to support the borough because my hope is that you folks that live and work there know what's best for the borough. But I'm not totally convinced that it's what's best for the county. And obviously, improved property values is good for the county over the long term. So I have to decide whether, like you say, postponing that over a 7-year period, and how. I really struggle with the residential piece because my thinking is that if the lady down on Main Street wants a new kitchen, she's going to get a new kitchen whether you have a LERTA or not. So I just don't see the real value of placing it on every property in the borough now. You know?
My response to that would be there's not enough people putting in new kitchens. And we're hoping that this will incentivize people to put in new kitchens, because it's not being done now, as you can see from, you know, the fact that we are half low to moderate income. You know, we are not suburban houses. We're not a 2-parent family with 2 kids and a dog who are doing upgrades. You know, we're very different from that, and we're hoping that this type of incentive will. And the housing stock is a concern, and that's a reason that we did add the residential into the tax abatement. For example, these rainstorms we've been getting over the past month and a half, we've had a lot of flooding. Foundations, they're 100 years old, and I mean, just in general, the entire housing stock is old and needs to be updated now. In the Lomont district, we're probably not going to get much of that updated, and that's just going to continue to deteriorate and continue to deteriorate, where that might not be a problem with newer homes. So again, we're hoping that these residential properties will be able to use this to take advantage. I mean, it's not, you know, it's not a grant, it's not giving away money, but we're hoping it'll be some sort of spark.
Well, you're in a unique, not so unique, but in terms of your size and your mix of people and so on, but yep. So I think any help that you can get, and I appreciate what you're trying to do to stabilize things fiscally and slow the conversion of houses to rental units and those kind of things. And you have something that maybe it addresses what Bill was saying about we don't remember a lot of appeals from that neck of the woods, but that you have a really good core of business people down there who want Myerstown to succeed. And that's you can't quantify that, but you know it's there just based on the service clubs and the activities that they have down there. But, for a small borough, you have a lot of that going for you.
Right.
So if you can couple that with, some other incentives to get people's attention and so on. So I'm supportive of this and see where it leads.
Yeah, I'll just say, it was a lot of those core business people who came to those meetings, who, when we had discussion about ways to spark development in the borough, it was them who were at those meetings who were involved in those discussions.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of and taking advantage of some incentive programs that we do have in place to help boroughs and cities. For instance, the first-time homebuyer program, there's assistance there, and also the Habitat for Humanity. It's not a county program, but they buy homes and rehabilitate them, because the truth of the matter is, the amount of money you put into rehabilitating an older home isn't necessarily going to equate to the assessed value in the end. So you have to love living in a community setting. You have to be able to put in some sweat equity and things like that to make it happen. And again, my logic comes back to making sure that what we do as a county board, at least from my perspective, will benefit the entire county, and we want Myerstown to succeed. And if there are jobs being created, I'm there, but with the residential component, I cannot.
Kind of piggybacking on that a little bit, do you get a community development block grant every year?
We do. The one for next year, we're actually repaving Railroad Street, which is one of the primary causes of our flooding right now.
Do you know offhand how much that is?
I couldn't tell you exactly, because the grant, it's a 65-35, so.
And it's also project-based, so at least that's my understanding, the CDBG money, you don't just ask for $200,000, you ask to fund particular projects, so it varies with what projects you have.
I cover the city a lot, and they get a substantial amount and divide it up, and they do have that first-time home buyer, a rehab program with their low-interest loans and things like that with that one. But I'm not sure you have the revenue to do that, but I was curious.
We have enough to do small projects. So, and a lot of the grant funding does require matching funds as well. We're lucky that we've got an 80-20 match with the state right now, where it doesn't cost as much for us to get some of those grants, but we certainly, we are stretched right now in terms of our contributions.
I know you've put a lot of effort into research and so on. I think to compare Myerstown Borough to Lancaster City is a stretch. Have you seen any small boroughs similar to Myerstown where this has succeeded?
I think size, Borough is pretty
Yeah,
close.
Columbia Borough and Phoenixville Phoenixville a little bit. They're the two that come to mind. We didn't meet with anybody from either of those boroughs, but Mountjoy Borough.
I chuckle because I own property in Mountjoy Borough,
Oh,
and
do you?
I'd rather not compare you to them.
Okay.
My experience with them. so.
Forget I said anything. And a lot of those programs just, I mean, we didn't sit down with their administration to discuss how they're going, but I think the length of some of the programs may be a clue to they don't want to get rid of it. So, I mean, I haven't seen, and I can't, I can't speak, I can't say I've looked at every municipality, but I can't say I've seen a lot of repealing.
You mentioned that some of the homes have had flooding, which brings to mind floodplain. And so putting money into homes that are in a floodplain, there may be a need to condemn them if the flooding gets worse. Is that something you've considered too?
Yeah, there's most of the, I mean, we have considered the floodplain we did with our, when we redid our zoning ordinance, we updated all of the regulations to, and we actually went even beyond to the federal regulations in terms of.
Did you do the 500-year floodplain or the 100-year?
The 100 year. The primary cause for the flooding right now is stormwater runoff, as opposed to flooding from the creek. We have very few roads that have stormwater drains, and that water's gotta go somewhere. And we're actually putting in, the main cause of it for this particular instance is a renovation of the curbs, making them ADA compliant, because they have those areas open and the water is all running into them right now. It's just going down into the basement, so that's our present concern. That's where that's coming from.
Well, you have two legs of the stool, and you want the third one, so what's your time frame, or is it sooner the better that we address this as a board?
I think the sooner the better. One of the, like I said, we did pass an ordinance and the school board did pass a resolution, both were unanimous. We are making an amendment to it. One of the concerns that was brought up from last time we were here was a minimum project value. And I think Dan recommended to us 10,000 would be a good minimum value, just so that we're not causing an unburdened, a large burden of unnecessary work, and that it's substantial project.
No.
If Dan had any comment to make?
The only thing I see from purely taxing side of it would be, it could become difficult if two legs are into it and one isn't, to handle that as an accounting part of it. I mean, I know it could be done, or can be done, but it could become a little difficult and hard to explain over the phone, just from our office standpoint.
Need an Excel spreadsheet set up.
I did have another question, but
If I
I
might,
don't have it now.
if I might make just two minor points from a legal standpoint. It is possible, although I think clearly this is not preferred by the borough, but it would be possible to do a resolution that would include the LERTA, which is the official LERTA as the act states, commercial business, industrial properties, and not include the act that deals with the residential side of things. Although that doesn't necessarily make Dan's job any easier either. But I mean, I'm just pointing that out. I mean, the borough and the school district, their ordinance and resolution are encompassing both acts, but it's technically legally possible to do the resolution only as to the business side of the things. The other thing is, I just want to point out that the way the LERTA statute is written, and the residential companion, there are actually a couple ways that you can, I actually think of, I know it's an abatement program, but I actually think of it as a phase-in. And some of the ways you could do it, you could actually say, okay, on the additional assessed value, the taxation on the additional assessed value is exempt for years 1, 2, and 3. Or you could even exempt it up to 10 years, 100%. But I think that Myerstown is sensitive to the fact that our other local taxing bodies can't go without money for 3 or as much as 10 years. And if you look at the system that they've set up, it is a shorter 7-year period, which is not the maximum amount allowed by the statute. But also, beginning in the only year that the additional assessed value is tax exempt is year 1. In year 2, only 10%, or only 90% is exempt, so 10% of that additional value is flowing back in. In year 3, 25% is flowing back in. In the 4th year, 40% is flowing back in. So it's not as though that additional assessed value is going untaxed for the full period. In year 2 already, 10%. And that, I mean, yes, if somebody only puts 10% or $10,000 into the project, maybe their additional assessed value isn't huge, and 10% in that 2nd year isn't a big deal. But if you've got a vacant property, a vacant industrial property that has, and I'm just gonna use round numbers here, has an assessed value of $50,000, and somebody comes in and puts a $500,000 improvement on it because they wanna have a business there, even 10% in year 2 on an additional assessed value is real money. And that's what we're talking about generating here. So I think that Myerstown is sensitive to the fact that we're not asking our other taxing entities to go without getting any benefit from this. And there's no cut to the existing tax assessment. There's no relief from what the taxes currently are on any of these properties. So just think it's important to note that.
I haven't read your ordinance. Do you have the, because Commissioner Litz had requested and we had incorporated a statement in these that did not permit any assessment appeal during the length of the LERTA. Have you included that?
That is illegal.
Huh?
That is illegal.
It's illegal.
Correct. Under this statute, if there is a LERTA or the companion ordinance or act for the residential side, those property owners have a right under the law to a tax appeal, the same way they would in any other situation. We cannot go around essentially what the state statute is on that.
They can agree to it.
I mean, the individual property owner can agree not to do an
We've had
assessment
LERTA's,
appeal.
we've
It's
had LERTA
possible.
agreements where the beneficiary has agreed to it in the LERTA agreement. Has agreed that they will not appeal their
But
assessment.
that was one
That was an
specific
entity that was
property.
coming to us for LERTA
Yeah,
on their
I mean,
project.
for this kind of a LERTA,
Okay.
Yeah,
it's-
I can see how it would be.
It is.
you essentially can't force
Right,
people to
because you're-
waive their
You're stipulating
statutory
for
right
the
to the assessment.
entire ownership,
That's a different
where
animal.
this is an agreement between
One.
the county and one property owner,
So there's really no wiggle room.
John, did you have one more?
Could you finish, you were going down the years for 40%?
Oh, sure. Okay, so, in the 5th year, it's a 45-55 split, so 55% would go back into the tax revenue. And in the 6th year, it would be 70%. So,
Like,
the
to an
way,
extra presentation, you could absolutely have all that.
And then full.
right, by the 7th year, there's no exemption for any increased assessed values.
I'm sorry I missed your workshop previously.
Anything else? So we'll have to discuss when we want to present it for vote.
Well, thank you very much for your time and your questions. A lot of this, it was a developing process of discussions with Borough Council, with the school board, and also with the commissioners. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I one more question of council. You had indicated that you could eliminate the residential component. Is that still open for that change, or?
Well, we would not eliminate it in the borough ordinance, and the school district, we would not go back to them and ask them to eliminate,
Right.
they've already agreed to exempt.
Okay.
But if it would be I hate to say this because I feel like it's stepping on your toes, but, I mean, if it's really a sticking point for the county, I mean, I do think that it would be possible for the county to adopt a resolution that would exempt
Well,
only the development or improvements in the commercial industrial.
I don't think it's significant, because you can only speculate, but I don't see huge residential improvements that we're talking about big dollars as far as tax income or loss of
Developments, because you don't have that kind of.
That's right.
Right,
Borough.
yeah.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your consideration.